Justin, great to see you. It's been a while now since we were sat here and we had a good chat back in September. If we just sort of reflect backwards before we look forwards, how would you reflect on the first half of the campaign?
Yeah, good overall. I mean, the first half of the campaign, or I guess one way to look at it, the first 6 months after the takeover was really all about bringing stability after the previous periods of turmoil. And I think collectively, and by that I mean Kosu and the staff and even the fans, we've brought stability to the club in lots of different ways, and we've laid some really good foundations, some that are visible to fans and maybe some that are a bit more behind the scenes but equally as important. So yeah, I guess it feels like that chapter of getting our feet under the table, stabilising. It was a bit of a scramble after the takeover, if you remember, both on the pitch. Our squad was, we had the embargo, so we weren't quite ready at the start of the year, but also off the pitch. We were late on season tickets for good reason. We weren't ready with Roots Hall for good reason. So in lots of ways, I think we sort of played catch up a bit. Did some really good stuff, by the way. So for the staff, I think we did a lot of good stuff, and just sort of laid some foundations and brought some stability to the club. And now it feels like we can sort of look up and, I think as you said, sort of look forward and start to go, how do we start to set some lofty goals and go after them rather than just always looking backwards and short term as perhaps we've had to in the past.
Yeah, and as we sit here, Wednesday we are today, almost forgot, and the here and now after 3 home games at Roots Hall, 7 points taken from those possible 9. It's definitely visible, the upward trajectory that we are on. I think we're in our highest position in the table that we've been all season. Of course, you must be really pleased that we're moving in the right direction on that front.
Well, yeah, knowing that we were going to have this interview today, I'm very, very pleased that we got 7 points in 9. Otherwise, it might have had a different tone to it. So well done to Kevin and the boys for. Yeah, it's a tough league. So 3 games in 8 days, regardless of who you play, is difficult. We've got a squad now in terms of strength of depth and numbers that we probably wouldn't have been able to deal with these sort of fixtures. In fact, frankly, we weren't able to deal with these fixtures at the start of the year. So that's probably a really good sign that we're bringing subs on now and changing games. Kevin talks about that. That's a sign of the strength of the squad, which is probably a really good sign of the strength of the club. We're moving in the right direction. Of course, we're not getting carried away, and we're not in the position that ultimately we want to be. But I think you've got to focus on momentum. And we started the season without momentum, and we're starting to move in the right direction. So credit to the guys for just each month is sort of getting better than the previous overall, which is what we're looking for.
Yeah, and you mentioned the squad depth, which was bolstered back in January. 3 permanent signings and 1 loan signing as well. It's the recruitment has it's been a talking point, I suppose. So could you maybe sort of speak a little bit about the structures that are in place in terms of the recruitment side, and how those processes have evolved?
Yeah, I mean, it's football clubs, right? So there's very few things that are going to be more exciting and more talked about than signings, or more bemoaned than lack of signings. I mean, it's football, right? We all get excited about new people joining and what they can do. I think we had a good January. We brought in not just numbers but quality and the players that we wanted in different positions. So well done to Kevin, John, and the broader team for. They do a lot of work out there, and we never want them to just sign someone for the sake of it. No fan, I think, realistically wants that. And sometimes when you lose a couple of games, there can be a bit of pressure. And I think as a club, we've always got to not bow to that pressure. We've always got to be strategic, look long term where possible, and not make reactive decisions. I think if you look at any football club that makes consistently reactive decisions, it doesn't tend to work. So we had a tricky period, I think, in terms of recruitment for a period. We were shopping in times where it wasn't necessarily good. But I think we had a good January. I think you asked about the processes. I know that people always want to know what's going under the hood. At a very high level, I would sort of say not a huge amount's changed. It's still football department knowing what they want and scanning the market. Board members don't scout for players. It's still the football department. And it comes to the owners for approval. We've got a sort of a subset of us that look at that because we've got a 7-person board, so we're not going to go to a 7-person board. to approve things. So I think all that's sort of fairly similar. In terms of what we'd be looking for, Kevin's aligned on this. We want to have a plan, which Kevin has, and we want to scan the whole market to see who's maybe the best for our club within our budget. There's a lot of talk about data. I know data in football, and I think people get quite emotive over it without always, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, without always really understanding what it means to say that we're going to use data or not use data. We certainly think data has a role to play in football. I think all modern football clubs use it in some ways. But it still starts with coaches, managers, heads of football looking for what they want. The data just helps you source a wider pool. So if used right, it's great. If you don't know what you're looking for, it's useless. I think it's got a role to play, but we haven't radically changed our processes. We're quite happy with what the guys do, but we'll always look for ways to improve processes. And I think we want a culture in the club where we're always looking to find that edge, consistently improve. And there's certainly tools out there now that can make a good job better.
And I suppose since our last update back in September, just the same way that the on-pitch squad has been bolstered off-pitch in terms of the board of directors. We've seen Shivas Galati join, I think, back in November time. So, I think our first chance to really talk about Shivas and him coming on board on this journey with us, I suppose. What does he bring to the board of directors? How did he get involved? And just speak a little bit about that, if you don't mind, please.
Yes, in terms of how he got involved, Shivas has a friend who works for Copa 90, but is a football media company, but is a Shrimpers fan. So the intro was through him. Shivas had been looking at different clubs for his football project within England, and then sort of, like me, fell in love with what we're doing here in this story. So we were really very glad that of all the clubs he was looking at, he chose to join us and what we're about. Everyone in the consortium other than myself and Shivas are Southend locals, so everyone gets that story. Shivas and I are a little different. We've sort of chosen to come into this story. What Shivas brings is actually quite different. He's, no disrespect for my colleagues in COSU, I would say he's the most innovative of us in terms of football innovation. He's more across different things that are out there, both on the pitch but also in marketing, and he's well connected. He's spoken to different clubs. He's introducing us to different people doing different things. So he keeps me on my toes and lots of new ideas. And I think he's been a really good addition, and he brings something different. Like I said, he's got different perspectives, and we really welcome those. And he's going to make us better, which is what we all want.
And in terms of some of the changes now that fans may have seen over the last few months or so, if we could maybe talk a little bit about the North Bank and how, it was great that fans were able to return to the North Bank. Obviously, that's been on pause for a little bit now, I think. We sort of saw that as an initial trial phase. Essentially, it was great that we could increase the capacity from sort of 8,500 to 10,500. And moving forward, is that something that you want to bring back, and what sort of learnings were there from that trial phase?
Yes, I think first and foremost, it's great that this whole section of the ground that was offline and dilapidated, frankly, is now, there's new toilets, there's food, and it's brought back online. The Charlton game, I wasn't at the game, but the atmosphere, even though we lost, obviously, in pretty heartbreaking circumstances, everyone said, what a great day, really reflecting of proper cup tie and huge crowd, in our biggest crowd in more than 10 years, I believe. So the Northwest Quadrant and bringing that back online allowed us to have big days like Charlton. I think at Ebbsfleet we got more home fans in for Boxing Day than we would have been able to otherwise. So that's really important. I think if you fast forward, when we knock down this East Stand, which is our plan, again, we're going to need to operate, I would imagine, for a year with 3 sides of the stadium. So the more capacity for that is important. So I think it's vitally important for the big games that we have that extra space. I think for the smaller games where we've trialled, it hasn't always been as smooth, and that's fine. I think partly that could be down to doing it mid-season. Everyone's got their season tickets, everyone's got their rhythms, we've got car parking situations, we've got all these things set, and then mid-season we try and change it. It's probably, it can be a little bit clunky, but there's been some lessons from it, as you said. I think I've seen some of the feedback that's come from fans, which to our credit, to the credit of the team, they've incorporated around, how do you access, or why is there a charge if I move my ticket? Good feedback that ultimately we agreed and incorporated. So the role of it, I know historically it was the stand at the home fans. Obviously, for me, I think the fans of today need to work together with the club and go, what do we want it to be next season and the season beyond? And it might change. What it is next season might be different than when we're hopefully up in the leagues. So as long as we keep communicating with fans, I'm sure we'll come up with the right solution for now, and then we'll have the right solution for tomorrow. Little segue on that. One of the things I think is important is that we've made it easier for fans to give feedback. There's QR codes dotted around the ground. There's a feedback at Southend United email address, at the fan advisory board. We do more surveys now in targeted ways than we did before. So I'd really encourage fans to use those channels. Use those channels. Give the club your perspective. I know firsthand that it gets read, it gets incorporated. Hopefully fans have seen that where we have made an error. We pick it up and we change it. We're going to make errors, so we need fans to give us their feedback, and we'll take it on board and do our best.
And in terms of sort of an infrastructure side of things, you sort of briefly touched upon like rebuilding the East Stand. It's a long-term goal and long-term vision for COSU and Southend United, of course. And maybe one of the more immediate objectives was relocating the first team into the new training facility. I know a lot of people have been doing a lot of work on that, Tom, contractors and that sort of thing. How close are we now for that transition to take place?
Yeah, the training ground is hugely important. I think we've said before, to achieve our objectives of an EFL club that's looking up, you can't just buy a couple of EFL players. You need EFL infrastructure, you need EFL culture. We need standards around the board that reflect that, and the training ground is a really important piece of that. I think the guys have been training on it for a while. The feedback we've had from the players and the coaches is that the surface is really good. Our ground staff have done really well there. Because again, we talked about bringing on a Northwest Quadrant mid-season's hard. Changing training grounds mid-season's probably not ideal either. So there's kind of a lot of these things that the club has to contend with. But the new facility I think looks great. Like I mentioned, some of the guys that have played at higher levels have said, hey, this compares favourably with championship type training facilities for the clubs that they've been at, which is great. I think if you're a professional footballer, it's hopefully going to be a really good place to come and work. They spend most of their time at the training ground after all, not Roots Hall. So a lot of financial investment's gone into it, a lot of time and effort's gone into it. And it's a really good facility. I'm sure, Matt, the media guys will do a little promo video.
Fly through maybe, yeah.
They'll fly through, and I think hopefully fans, when they see that, will see it's another sign that the foundations of the club and some of the building blocks we need for a successful future are being put in place. Because it's important to keep an eye on those things, not just the ups and downs of a Saturday.
Moving on to sort of the ladies and the youth teams, who are also a key part of the club's long-term vision. In terms of though maybe short-term, what changes have been made there and the developments in terms of furthering those two areas of the club?
Yeah, started with the women's team. I mean, I'm a huge supporter of the women's team, as hopefully most people know, and I've made that very consistently since I first got on the scene. Often when you talk about, hey, we're going to support, invest, etc., people just think financially. That will eventually be important, but where we wanted to start was the mentality of treating it as one club. We want to represent the whole city, not half of it. We want boys and girls of all ages to be supporters of Southend and to have pathways of football. Not many people are fortunate to get to professional football, but you want to have Southend United opportunities at different levels for both boys and girls. So as soon as we took over the club, my mentality is one city, one club, two teams, that sort of stuff. Financial investment needs to be more modest. So unapologetically, we still lose a lot of money, and we have to invest quite a lot of money into the stadium, the training ground, etc. So we want to build a little bit more slowly and organically on the women's side. We make some modest investments at the moment, but really what we want to do is have the same events, wear the same kit, share the same website, those sorts of things, really integrate as one club. but the men and the women will naturally have different growth stories and different timings on things. I actually personally think that's slightly less important. We do have a 5-year goal to eventually have a semi-pro women's team, but let's start by building the foundations and supporting them. The academy, you just look at me, I was like, there was a second part to that question, wasn't there? With the academy, our academy was obviously when you drop out of the EFL, you lose the elite academy after a couple of years, which we did. When we get back in the EFL, we'll turn on that elite academy. But I want to just highlight there's been some really good work by the Community Foundation to sort of breathe life back into the academy, turn it back on in the younger ages, but also, breathe life is probably the expression I've got. Hopefully that makes sense, to the 17s, the 19s. Not that it's the most important thing, but the 17s, the 19s, they're near the tops of their respective leagues. I went out there recently and saw the training set up. There's a really good atmosphere around the place, real positivity, not just on the pitch, but with the learners and the teachers, etc. So I think the foundation is a bit of sometimes an unsung hero of the club. Does huge work in the community. Specifically, they're doing the academy, but they do so many other things to get people connected with Southend United. So the academy is going to be a big part of our future, as it was our past when we get back in the league. But I'm really glad that the foundation's creating those pathways like now, rather than waiting for that promotion.
Moving on to a more broader topic, maybe not specifically related to the football club itself, but linked. It was, how we recently saw the National League launch a 3-up campaign with the aim to, eventually one day hopefully get 3 promotion places from the National League into the EFL. I was sort of going to ask you maybe how optimistic you are of seeing that sort of change happen, and I suppose it's something that you fully endorse.
Yeah, certainly I and we as a club fully endorse, as do all the National League clubs in the 3-up, 3-down campaign. I think it's long overdue. I think if you look at the English pyramid as the envy of other countries, other codes, look at the amount of investment that comes in from America, who doesn't really have the promotion relegation concept, and often you'll hear different owners and investors from America talking about that excitement, that jeopardy. And again, it's not all about investment, but I think we've got to remember the envy of the pyramid is promotion, fairness. You can go up, you can go down, and that access it. It's not a pyramid at the moment. It's kind of like an iceberg, and those of us from National League down are sort of under that waterline. So I think if the vote goes ahead and goes down to fairness, it's difficult objectively to see a reason why it wouldn't go through. Obviously, when people vote, they vote for different reasons other than fairness. So, optimistically, I'm not so sure, but very, very supportive of it, and hopefully, people think about the good of the game, and if they do, I think then they would vote through the 3-up, 3-down.
Just rounding things off a little bit then, and bringing it back to first team matters. We sit here, I think 8th in the table, as we sort of said, highest league position so far this season, of course. But how excited are you then as we approach the final third of this campaign with 15 games to go, with an exciting end to the season? Hopefully, not putting too much pressure on, but challenging for those playoff positions. Yeah,
it's exciting. I mean, like all fans, I'll look at the league table and I'll look at who's playing who, and I'll do the maths and I'll look at who's got games in hand. I mean, like all fans do. And we're up to 8th now. I appreciate there's games in hand around us, but we're 8th. We're in the conversation. We're clearly heading the right direction. The games are going to come thick and fast. We've now got the squad to deal with that. So I think it's exciting. I don't know where we'll end up at the end of the year. I don't think anyone does. I'm sure Kevin would say just game by game. We've got Tamworth next. Let's go and put in a performance there. But I think it's a credit to the guys that we're heading in the right direction. I think most clubs probably look at their season at the end of the year and go, hey, how did we go? I guess this season's been a little different. What I perhaps am doing is looking for momentum, looking for improvement, looking for the signs that we're doing the right things and getting better. And I think you can see all those signs. We've had a good week. It doesn't mean there won't be setbacks. It doesn't mean we won't lose to someone unexpectedly. These things will always happen. But hopefully people can see that we're heading in the right direction. The squad's filled out. There's quality, there's competition, there's hunger. We've had a few good results now. So hopefully it's a good run in, and let's see where we end up.